Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Exorcist. Of course, this is, of course, the original Exorcist. I don't know if there was a remake or whichever, but this is the original one, the Linda Blair Exorcist. So, really, sadly, though, I had reviewed this once before on the other channel that I had, and I reviewed this with like two other films, and I was kind of like, you know what, like, it would have been good to have this review here, and because technically, like, The Exorcist, like, that was my first ever time watching that movie, and like, I wanted to keep that on this channel to like have this be like yeah, my first time ever watching The Exorcist, and this is my first time ever watching it and reacting to it, whatever, because I never really saw this film until much more recently. But that video I decided to just, like, you know what, like, I want a clean slate, and whatever is going to be on this channel is whatever is going to be on this channel. So, really, this is my second time watching The Exorcist, and this is my review. So, really, I would say this movie is kind of really just a one-off film to watch. Really, there might be some people that are like, yeah, I watch this movie every Halloween. It's one of the movies that is marathon, so I watch it every year or something. Like, or some people would just be like, yeah, like, I'd never seen this film and I never want to, and whatever. And like, I want to hear other people who review this movie, and they get terrified while they watch the film. Really, I think the very first time that I watched this, like, there is some, like, unsettling moments, I guess, but really, I could say, like, yeah, but everything between that is just this long stretch of, like, figuring out what the heck is wrong with this kid. And really, it does kind of get to me really very recently watching a movie like The Unholy, which seems very familiar to this, but very drastically, like, this girl is cussing in this movie, and this girl is like spinning her head back, and like this girl is like vomiting in priests' faces, and all kinds of things, speaking in Latin and being really creepy. But like, to me, via this recording, I had also recently just seen, I think almost on the same day, I had watched this, and I had watched Jeff Goldblum's The Fly. So, like, really, like, while, like, watching this movie, around that time that I was watching The Fly, like, this movie just came as a less than kind of thing. Just because for me, like, I was like, dude, I just watched a movie where, like, all kinds of stuff was, like, creeping me out about that film. But like, I was just like expecting it. I like knew it was coming. Like, I had heard things about that film, and then I kind of went into it going like, dude, like, I'm battle hardened. Like, dude, I watched like the Kurt Russell thing and the remake. Like, I watched this movie, and then I watched a number of things that were like ballparkingly just like this. And so, like, really, like, when The Fly came up, I was like, yeah. And then, like, I watched this film, and, like, I would say that this film is just, like, a little unsettling if someone has never seen it. But, like, to me, like, there are parts of this where it kind of reminds me of The Grudge at some parts. Like, there's things here that, when watching this, especially when the girl is coming down when Chris McLean is throwing this party at her house. They're playing the piano, and we have some astronaut that is mentioning at this party that's like, hey, I'm going into space, and we have Reagan, who is coming down there to let this astronaut know, you're gonna die up there, and then I'm gonna just pee on the floor. I'll see you later. I'm just gonna go upstairs. We really have it to where, man, does the mother in this film just lose her, like, this woman is an actress and she is to be doing films, and like, man, is she just trying to scramble to desperately find an answer for her daughter. And we consistently have Chris, who is desperately telling everybody, I am not going to lock my daughter away into some mental loony bin hospital. Like, I am not going to do that. Somebody needs to give me an answer to solve and cure my daughter right here and now. Like, because she was fine the day before and she was crazy now. This makes no sense. So we have Father Marin, who had gone on to be this archaeological digger. And so eventually, I guess he is to find some trinkets of sorts, but that has really nothing to do with the rest of this movie. Kind of the older priest, but we also have another priest that eventually Chris is to eventually come upon, who was a therapist that eventually decided to turn to priesthood. So, like a therapist or a psychologist or something along those lines. I don't exactly remember. But yeah, we end up having Father Karras, or Karras? Karras? I'm going to say Karras because that's the way I want to pronounce it, but it could be wrong. Father, let's go with Karras to be safe. Father Karras is to eventually break down and almost be a father who is almost kind of slipping with the whole faith thing, to the point where he's kind of like, you know what? Like, I don't know if I really and truly believe anymore. And then he is the guy who is ending up being pushed into having to help perform this exorcism. Huh? Okay. But yeah, so really we are to go on with this story, and I think it's about that coveted time again to go into spoilers about this movie. I am probably going to try and probably pull back a lot and not to go into heavy amount of details. Like, there might be some character things that I might go into. Like, I think I kind of pretty much went into the very beginning of this movie, kind of explaining that. But, like, in a roundabout way, so what does this movie provide? It provides head turning, it provides cursing a lot, it provides a girl who eventually goes and barfs on a priest, and we eventually have at some point we have Reagan who is stabbing at her the JJ. Very weird, yes. Very bizarre movie. But really, like, I would say that this movie is just kind of in the barely unsettling kind of thing. Like, dude, I'm seeing some that'll turn you white, and this one doesn't quite exactly get there for me. Like, if anything, like the second time around, like the first time around, like this impacted me a lot more than I think this time around. This time around, I was like, yeah, like not exactly not like, it kind of got really boring the second time around, and maybe I probably felt that the first time around, but like this time especially, I was like, this movie's honestly just kind of boring, because it's the whole like lead up of us like really getting every little bit of this like lead up of getting this girl possessed. So I think it's about time to lead our way into spoilers about this movie. So if I haven't cracked out the double 5-time territory, let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. Let's go and do this movie review. Ooh. All right. So I don't know what I was doing there. The coveted spoiler time has consistently changed throughout this entire day. I've been slapping things. I've been doing things oddly out of normal pace of spoiler time. So it is what it is. So spoilers now. So we have Chris, who is a seemingly widowed woman. She is without husband, and so we have Chris, and so we have her daughter Regan. Seems like Regan is just the nicest daughter, and we have Chris, who is going off to film in this movie, and she's doing some protest scene. It seems that Father Karras is to walk across to eventually see like some movie being filmed, but he has no real true connection yet with this person. And so we have Chris, who is to talk to Regan, and it seems like she is the nicest girl in the world. Regan is even asking her mother about her boyfriend, and maybe that like her and her boyfriend should just come and kind of do something with Regan, because like I think she's having a birthday or something coming up, and like Regan is trying to invite this guy that her mother has been seeing, and man, is that gonna probably go up in flames. So we start to consistently have Chris mentioning that she is starting to hear something up in the attic, which she thinks is rats. So it seems that she is to have two assistants with her in her home, and so we have Chris, who is to tell these assistants, hey, you know what? I'm starting to hear some rats up in the attic. You want to go and get some rat traps and maybe see if like we can like get rid of this problem? And so we have one of her people mentioning to her, it's like, you know what, like I don't think that there is a problem. Like I think like that is all taken care of. I don't know what you're hearing, but I don't think it's rats. So we eventually have Chris eventually having rat traps being put up in the attic anyways. So eventually we have Chris, who is to eventually just go up in the attic, because it's like, dude, is there like a million rats in here, or what's going on? Like, what is the problem? And so, like, why aren't these rats like going away? And so Chris is to eventually go up into the attic, and like all the traps are there, and eventually like Chris is to like consistently look into the attic, and there seemingly is no rats there. And so like Chris is trying to understand what the heck the problem is. So so here it is. So we eventually have Regan, who is to kind of start being a little bit rude to people. And so it's kind of like abnormally rude. Regan would, from time to time, bring up this other imaginary friend of hers. And so maybe we have Chris or somebody assuming that this imaginary friend like is telling her to talk like this or something. Like she probably had gotten this from somewhere, and so we eventually have it at some point that that Reagan's bed is eventually shaking. And so Regan calls out for her mother, and so Chris goes to try and like stop Regan's bed from shaking. And so we immediately have Chris is like, dude, I need to take my daughter to the doctor. Like, he has to just solve this right away, just stop this and all kinds of business. So we have Chris, who is to go to this doctor, and so this doctor is just mentioning, well, yeah, I think your kid is just hyperactive. I'm just gonna, like, just give her a big old thing of Ritalin, and yeah, she'll be fine. Yeah, like, as if, like, solve everything with Ritalin. Just, like, solve it all out. So, we eventually, Chris, who is seemingly still, like, bed shaken, and like Reagan is just in a crappy mood. And so we eventually have Chris, who is desperately having this doctor come back, and the doctor is just like, well, like, did you not give her the Ritalin? Like, I don't think you gave her the Ritalin. Like, I think the problem is just with that Ritalin. And so Chris is just like, oh my god, like, because Reagan is like, hey, can you figure this out? Like, what is gonna solve this problem? And Chris is just like, just take your medicine, honey. Just take your medicine, and you'll be fine. Like, I promise. And so we have Reagan, who is still having these problems, and so Reagan goes and gets a second opinion, and we have this doctor that is mentioning that the problem with Reagan is some, like, frontal lobe thing problem with, like, this girl's brain. And we have Chris who's like, dude, I'm not gonna, like, vegetabilize my daughter. Like, I'm not going to, like, I'm not gonna send her into a loony bin for the rest of her life. Like, no, this is crazy. Like, I'm not gonna have somebody operate on my daughter and just turn her into a zombie for the rest of her life. No, like, let's get another opinion. So we eventually have a hypnotist come in to talk to Reagan. And so we have this hypnotist who is hypnotizing Reagan. And so we have this hypnotist who is to talk to Reagan, and is like, and is pulling the, like, Bill Murray from Ghostbusters thing, where like, he is to talk to Reagan, and he's like, okay, could I speak to the other entity that is going to be hypnotized as Reagan is now? And so we have this other entity who decides to talk to this hypnotist, and this hypnotist is just like, yeah, yeah, not quite gonna work out. Just not, no, yeah. So, pushing on. So, we have Chris, who is to end up having nowhere to turn at this point. And so Chris is just like, well, maybe my daughter just has the devil inside of her. So, but also here is the very, very beginning of this movie. So we have Father Maris, like I had said, this guy's to eventually perform this exorcism on Linda Blair's character, Reagan, because everyone knows that happens. So Father Reagan is to go and be on an archaeological dig, digging for these trinkets, and then he's eventually to be sent to where Reagan is to perform this this ceremony of exorcism. So we eventually have Chris, who is to eventually like, start finding a like, anybody who knows anything about like, is a psychologist, but is also, like, a priest. And it seems that Chris is to eventually end up talking to this Lieutenant William Kenderman, who knows this priest, who is a therapist and is a or is a psychologist and is a priest. It seems that Father Karras is to be living with his mother, and we have Father Cross, who is to uh, eventually have to take his or is to eventually see his mother in some hospital, and it seems that Father Cross is just having like problems like with his mother, and so we have Father Cross who is starting to weigh the fact of he is not really and truly like having a lot of faith lately, and how he's kind of going to one of his friends and mentioning like, you know what, I don't know if I believe anymore. And so we have Chris who is to go and talk to this Father Cross. And so we have Chris who's like, well, you know, I've gone to a number of different doctors, and there's a lot of stuff that no one can exactly explain. And so maybe this is gone so far that this is actually something that is going to lead to an exorcism. And so Father Cross is like, well, there has to be a couple things to be done before we are to understand whether or not that this is a exorcism case or not. And so Father Cross is to not have Chris explain to him that, like, at one point, like, Chris had gone into Reagan's room and she is stabbing herself in the vajayjay, and when Chris is trying to get Reagan to stop, Reagan is to shove her mother's face almost into her vajayjay and to tell her to lick it, and all kinds of rude-esh like things, turning her head around to where her mother is like, oh my god, there is something deeply wrong with my daughter. And so we have Father Cross who is to go and speak with Reagan, and we have Father Cross who is to know that his mother is to die in the hospital. And so we have Father Cross who goes to Reagan, and so we have Reagan who is to tell Father Cross that his mother is sucking Johnsons in hell. His mother is sucking Wangs in hell. And she like consistently keeps saying that, I guess, to just tick him off. And so we eventually have also that Reagan is starting to speak in Latin. And so we have Father Cross who's recording this conversation. And so it seems that Father Cross can speak Latin too. So they're having this whole conversation in Latin, and and Reagan is easily speaking in Latin. And so we have Father Cross who had mentioned that one of the things is that this girl is to speak a language that she does not know that she has ever spoken before, which is, of course, Latin. So, ding, fries are done. So, we eventually have at some point Reagan vomiting on Father Cross, and so it's like, yeah, I think that this girl might just be, you know what, because we have Father Cross who is to go and fling water onto Reagan and to see what happens. And so Reagan is to mention, it burns, it burns, it burns. And so we have Father Cross who is done with his examination. And so Father Cross is to say to Chris, did Reagan know that my mother had passed? And Chris is like, well, of course not. And so Father Cross had mentioned, it's like, yeah, like, the weird thing is that, like, I had thrown this water onto Reagan, and I told her it was holy water, but it wasn't. And it's just normal tap water. It wasn't blessed. So Reagan was like flailing about like it was holy water, and she was feeling that she was burnt. Whether that, like, I guess the father mentioning that it's holy water is the blessing, I guess. Anyways, so we are to just push on within this movie. So Father Cross is to let all like the priesthood know it's like, dude, this girl is possessed. Like full on, like there's a lot of like paperwork to confirm all this, and so the priests are like, okay, well, who are we gonna send? Like who would be able to do a exorcism? They start like notching down the names and mentioning that one exorcist had almost killed one priest and this and that and like, but like it was interesting that Father Cross, when talking to Chris, like was mentioning how like most priests don't know as much about exorcisms as like Chris honestly would. And so really, like, I guess they have to find the right priest who can just specialize in doing exorcisms, because it's like a very like old fashioned thing to do, like now in the modern age. Because really, like Father Cross had mentioned to Chris, like exorcisms used to happen long ago, like before they started to actually really establish that it's like, well, maybe it's just a mental health like disorder, or maybe like it's there's just a like a problem with this person, and like we need to send him to a hospital to be able to take care of that problem and rehab that problem, and him to be able to come back fine. So we are to have eventually Father Marin eventually go on to uh, perform this séance with Father Karras. And so we have them go and try to perform this séance, and of course we end up having Reagan, who is rude as F. And so we are to push on. And so they're performing the ceremony. Reagan is barfing and all kinds of stuff. They are to read scripture, and at some points, Cross is trying to find the words, and Father Marin is asking Father Cross to like answer him, and with another scripture. And so like we eventually have because Reagan is like consistently interrupting them, pulling out her tongue, licking licking her lips, or not licking her lips, like flinging this tongue back and forth, all kind of goofiness. Uh, oh, uh, no, I think I kind of covered that. I covered the whole pee scene because, yeah, eventually Reagan goes down while Chris is throwing a party. She ends up peeing on the floor, and Chris is to forcibly have her maid or her cleaner woman clean up the spot, to where Chris is just like, this is really getting out of hand. Chris is to eventually go and like bathe Reagan, and like to try to understand what is going on with her daughter. So pushing on. So, Father Reagan or Father Marin and Father Cross are going and trying to perform this ceremony, and trying to uh, like try to get this demon from out of Reagan, but it just isn't working. Like they're trying so hard to get this demon out of her, but it's not working. Eventually, Father Reagan is trying so hard with this ceremony, holy water and everything, crosses, trying to put like a cross on this girl's body to try to get this evil out of her, ba 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 ba, trying to do any number of things to try and get this girl to have this demon come out. And eventually, Father Marin tries so hard that he ends up having a heart attack and dying, which is to basically force Father Cross to try and continue to do this ceremony. But Reagan is to insult Father Cross so badly that Father Cross is to grab Reagan and kind of beat the devil out of her, and to have Father Reagan tell, or Father Reagan, we're having Father Cross tell Reagan that, like, give up this girl and come into me. And so we have the devil giving up Reagan to go into Father Cross's body, and Father Cross ends up going through a window, falling down some flight of stairs that are on the outside of this place, and dying. Which I'm like, oh my god! Like, man, this movie just eventually, has a horrible ending where there feels like there's not really and truly a real winner out of this, I guess, besides really just Reagan getting this devil out of her. But really, it just, it feels so horrible for the priest that ended up, trying to do this ceremony, and, Father Marin just has a heart attack and keels over, and Father Cross just ends up having to give up his own life for this girl. And, we eventually have some other priest who is to try and, do a prayer onto Father Cross, and eventually that's it. Reagan is cured, and people are just going about the rest of their life after these priests have died. And so, really, we have Lieutenant William Kinderman, who had seen Chris earlier. Chris is just going on and asking one of the other priests if he is going to see another movie, and that's basically how we just eventually just roll out of this film. But yeah, this movie, the first time around, I think was much more impactful. It was much more whoa. I think we have some points in this movie here where I probably just tried to just really ram through it. So I apologize if really if somebody had seen my other review and they thought oh, that was a way better review. This one is just kind of rushing through. Really, for this one, not as good the second time around. I was just kind of man, this movie is just a really, to me, this movie felt like a really long film. But with that said, yeah, that is this review. Maybe eventually I will, at some point, maybe watch other exorcism films if that seems to be an interesting thing for people. Really, there might be some other films like this that people might want me to see eventually in the future. But with that said, yeah, I am going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.